Last month, we revisited some cool British singles released in May 1968. Now, it's time to take a look at some great British releases from June. And June 1968 was a particularly excellent month for singles. So without further ado, let's begin.
I am the god of hellfire, and I bring you fire. I take you to burn.
This single by The Crazy World of Arthur Brown became one of the biggest British singles of 1968. This was the group's second 45. Their debut single, which was issued in September 1967, was a commercial failure. By June 1968, Arthur Brown was already well known in the psychedelic underground scene. His exciting live shows had already turned him into a cult favorite in Britain. But both record labels and producers believed that the excitement of his live show couldn't be translated into records. This single, however, proved them all wrong. The New Musical Express wrote,
"Judging by this record, I wouldn't describe Arthur Brown's world as crazy. I'd say it was exciting, dynamic, and full of vitality. This is a spine-tingling disc in which the vocal admittedly has a touch of hysteria, but otherwise it's groovy, energetic, and galvanizing with some scintillating organ work."
The group's organist was Vincent Crane, who also co-wrote the song. Vincent Crane and Carl Palmer left the group in early 1969 and formed Atomic Rooster. And of course, Carl Palmer later achieved success as a member of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. The B-side was a song called Rest Cure.
Rest cure to make the world stand still. Rest cure and the world will bring you down. No.
The single became a massive hit, reaching number 1 in the UK and number 2 in the States. And it was also a top 10 hit in several European countries.
Hush, hush, I thought I heard her calling my name now. Hush, hush, I need her loving and I'm not to blame.
June 1968 saw the release of Deep Purple's first single. Hush became a massive hit in the States, but oddly enough, the single went completely unnoticed in the UK. Record Mirror wrote,
Originally, the 5 boys who make up Deep Purple were with other groups, but they had mutual admiration for each other as musicians. Recently in Denmark, they nicked a lot of the honors in competition with the likes of Jimi Hendrix and Cream. They now live in a country house in Sussex, and they live in hopes that their debut disc is the hit it deserves to be.
The B-side was a Rod Evans and John Lord composition called One More Rainy Day. The single got mostly positive reviews in the press, but it didn't get any airplay on the radio, and it sank without a trace. In the States, however, Hush became a massive hit, reaching number 4 and remaining several weeks in the charts. The first LP by this group, called July, is one of the rarest and most expensive collector's items from that period. The record, which is regarded by many as a psychedelic masterpiece, has exchanged hands on Discogs or eBay for over £2,000. This single from June 1968 was released shortly before their first album.
When one man fills your head, just remember things I said.
The group was formed in the early to mid-60s as the Tomcats. The Tomcats were one of many British bands who moved abroad in order to avoid the competition that existed in Britain. In this case, the group moved to Spain and achieved moderate success there. The Tomcats moved back to the UK in 1967 and changed their name to July. This was the group's debut single. Record Mirror wrote,
Listen carefully to my Clown by July and see if you can figure out what creates all the offbeat sound effects. I can't provide the answer, but the production should create a lot of controversy. The song was written by July member Tom Newman, and it will be followed up soon by an LP of 12 original tracks. They certainly have a bit of an African influence seeping through, a souvenir of their times working in Tangier, and Spanish sounds as well. Well worth that aforementioned careful listen.
The B-side was another excellent psychedelic tune called Dandelion Seeds.
Dandelion seeds, blow them and they're gone, flying to the sun.
The single got some excellent reviews in the press, But the song didn't get any airplay on the radio, and as a result, the single was a commercial failure. June 1968 also saw the release of this excellent single by the Kinks. The track featured the sort of nostalgic and melancholic lyrics that came to define many songs by the Kinks from that period.
Their latest song's yet another hit for them. It's called Dave, the Kinks.
In an interview several years later, Ray Davies commented,
"Pop musicians aren't meant to go on forever, and around this time, whenever I finished a session, I thought maybe this is the last record I'd ever make. That's why it has this strange emotion to it." Fortunately, though, the Kinks went on to make other records.
The New Musical Express wrote,
Back come those Kinks straight into the chart, but now they seem to have forsaken their more poignant sounds and reverted to a little more rhythm. Stabbing beat, guitars and drums right up front. In fact, it doesn't seem they have any additional accompaniment, which gives them a comparatively thin sound. Still, they need have no qualms about that in this number on which Ray takes lead and recalls the important things that have happened to him on special days. The song drives along and is great for dancing or just sitting back and listening to the Davies lyric.
The B-side was an old unreleased track recorded in February 1966.
I got a girl and she is mine. She got everything.
The single reached number 12 in Britain, but just like most Kinks singles from that period, the record failed to chart in the States.
There was nothing in my life bigger than fear.
This single is one of the most forgotten 45s ever released by The Who. The single charted lower than most of the group's previous releases, and both sides sounded more like album material than singles material. In the States, the B-side of the single had already been released as an A-side in March 1968.
We'll show you why they call me like dun, 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 dun.
The group even filmed a promo video for the song. The New Musical Express wrote,
Novel lyrical idea, telling how dogs dominate the life of a young couple both as pets at home and as a source of gambling at the dog track. But as you might expect from The Who, it's dressed up ingeniously and elaborately. Bounds along at a thundering pace, spotlighting walloping drums, clanking piano and twangs. The vocal solo sounds not unlike Tommy Steele, and this gives way to some really startling harmony passages. As a bonus, we also get a couple of amusing spoken passages, including one by a gent who's apparently swallowed a sheet of sandpaper. Thoroughly entertaining, with a fairly catchy tune, plus solid beat for dancing. It should hit the jackpot. The flip is The Who's US hit Call Me Lightning, which they thought was too dated for a British A-side, understandably because at times they sound like The Shadows.
Dogs only managed to reach number 25 in the UK. In the States, Call Me Lightning stalled at number 40 according to Billboard. Keith Emerson got his first taste of success as the leader of the Nice, and this was the group's only hit single. The song was an instrumental rearrangement of this piece from West Side Story, written by Leonard Bernstein. Keith Emerson himself described their cover as the first ever instrumental protest song. The track concluded with these words.
With promise and anticipation, but is murdered by the hand of the inevitable.
A couple of weeks after the single was released, the group spawned controversy when they burned an American flag on stage during a performance of the song at the Royal Albert Hall. The Nice was subsequently banned from ever playing the venue again, but the incident gave the group a lot of publicity, and it propelled the song into the top 30 in Britain. The single peaked at number 21.
Just what is happening to me? I'm awake with the sound of the sea calling to me.
Just like the previous single by The Nice, this single by the Moody Blues seems to confirm that the second half of 1968 was probably the period in which psychedelia gave way to progressive rock. The B-side was another good song.
We're all looking for someone. We're all looking for someone.
Both sides of this excellent single were featured a month later on the group's second album. Record Mirror wrote,
"This is a rather wondrous production. I'm not saying it is instantly to be labeled for the charts because there is a lot happening and it takes time to register. But if justice still prevails, then it will make it. Excellently sung, and the backing is quite tremendous, but in a restrained sort of style. Great lyrics."
The single reached number 27 in Britain.
So sad to say that I'm flying away. I just can't stay one more day.
Just like the previous single by the Moody Blues, this single by a group called Freedom features some great mellotron sounds, and it's a fantastic slice of trippy psychedelia. The group was formed in late 1967 by Ray Royer and Bobby Harrison. Both musicians had been fired from Procol Harum just a month after the group released A Whiter Shade of Pale. The A-side of this single was also a decent song.
Who will you see tonight? My lady gold, tears you unfold.
But to my ears, the highlight was undoubtedly the B-side. Record Mirror wrote,
Freedom means a lot of things to a lot of people. In pop, freedom, with a capital letter, means Bobby Harrison and Ray Royer, who were formerly with Procol Harum. Film director Dino De Laurentiis used them to write the score and perform in a full-length color movie, and also to play in his New Year's party in Monte Carlo, a social highlight. Another highlight is their record on Mercury.
Shortly after the release of the film's soundtrack, the group's sound shifted towards a heavier style. The band achieved great renown for their excellent version of Cry Baby Cry by the Beatles, which was featured on their second album Freedom at Last.
King America was in the kitchen, cooking breakfast for the Queen.
Further lineup changes occurred before the band finally splintered in 1972. The Mojos were one of many Liverpool bands who achieved success when the Beatles started scoring their first hits. The Mojos, however, had a rawer sound than most Liverpool groups from that period. One of their songs was even covered by David Bowie in 1973. But just like many Liverpool bands from the early 60s, their popularity started to fade away in 1965. By June 1968, the band had gone through several lineup changes, and the group seemed completely forgotten. At this point, nobody expected anything from the band, but this was an excellent song with an excellent memorable melody.
Ain't no loving is hard of my love, not since my baby's gone.
One of the highlights of the single was the blistering guitar solo by Eddie Harnett. The New Musical Express wrote,
The Mojos were one of the first of the Merseybeat groups to spring to fame on the crest of the Beatles wave. They've been out of the limelight for quite a while, but now they're back on a different label. And times haven't changed. This is an insidious rhythm and blues medium pacer peppered with twangs and soloed in raving style by the leader. Quite a catchy tune, plus an irresistible beat for dancers.
The single failed to chart.
Stay another day would be to live a lie. You gotta get away.
Another highlight from June 1968 was this single by a band called New York Public Library. Despite their name, the group hailed from Leeds, and this was their second release. The A-side of the single was an excellent tune that was very influenced by the psychedelic folk sounds of bands like the Byrds.
People that you know don't seem to change, even though you know you're not the same. And this time you were moving on.
The press, however, wasn't too enthusiastic about the single. Record Mirror wrote,
Jangly Birds type guitar opens this loudly recorded beat ballad, lots of echo, etc., but not too inspiring.
The group released 2 more singles and broke up in 1972. Spooky Tooth are one of the most underrated British bands from the late 60s. Their first two albums, which were both produced by Jimmy Miller, are essential listening to anyone who loves music from that era. This single from June 1968 was the group's second 45.
Love really changed me.
The A-side of the single was featured on their debut album, which was released a month later in July 1968. The B-side was an instrumental number called Luger's Groove. Record Mirror wrote,
Presented here by ace producer Jimmy Miller, this group should make it this time out. The number is interestingly pushed along with a variety of offbeat rhythms, good percussion, and some inventive ideas on the vocals. The lead singer has a natural blues soul feel to his voice. I hope it breaks.
Despite the quality of the song and the good reviews, the single didn't make the charts.
My name's Jack, and I live in the back of the Greta Garbo home for wayward boys and girls.
June 1968 also saw the release of this single by Manfred Mann. This was their seventh single with lead singer Mike Dabo, who replaced Paul Jones in 1966. Disc magazine journalist Penny Valentine wrote,
Really, one never ceases to wonder at the Manfreds who, with the exception of So Long Dad, have steadily churned out hit after hit. They always take their time turning out a new single, and it's always worth it. This is no exception and will provide them with a huge summer smash. This Paul Simon song wins the prize for having the best lyrics of the year. The chorus makes it, My name is Jack and I live at the back of the Greta Garbo home for wayward boys and girls. How can you beat that? You can't. Buy it instead.
The B-side was a strange psychedelic tune which proves that the Manfreds were probably listening to the Syd Barrett compositions on the first album by Pink Floyd.
Don't come back another day, please.
The single reached number 8 in Britain and became a top 10 hit in several European countries. In the States, however, the song only managed to reach number 104.
Continental hesitation makes you feel free.
Another highlight from June 1968 was this brilliant psychedelic B-side by a group called Rien.
Is there a purpose? Do we need to find out?
Not much is known about the group, but apparently the group was led by singer-songwriter Ed First, who had played in an early incarnation of the Blossom Toes. This B-side has achieved cult status through its appearance on several compilations of obscure psychedelia from the 60s.
When you were a little child, you knew wrong from right.
The single went completely unnoticed, and it wasn't even reviewed by the press. According to Ed First himself, the single sold 297 copies, one of which was bought by him, and 2 by his mum.
Lavender popcorn is waiting for you. Lavender popcorn and Mr. Magoo.
This group called Scrugg was led by John Kongos, who scored a couple of hits when he went solo in the early 70s. Lavender Popcorn was a brilliant slice of psychedelic pop that deserved better luck.
On the other side of everything in front of you.
But unfortunately, the single wasn't promoted at all, and it didn't get any airplay on the radio. The name of the band probably didn't help either. The single didn't chart. I hope you enjoyed this trip back to June 1968. See you next time.